Okay, so this is the video for the review for your last test of the quarter. So number one is they give you a function, f of x is equal to x to the third minus x squared minus 8x. And you first have to evaluate f of 2. Alright, so let's start with plugging in 2 for x. Okay, so f of 2 is 2 cubed minus 2 squared minus 8 times 2. Alright, so you plug that in your calculator and you should get f of 2 is equal to negative 12. Alright, so b is f of negative 2. So f of negative 2, so that's negative 2 cubed minus negative 2 squared minus 8 times negative 2. Plug that in your calculator and you get 4. All right, f of I. So it's f of negative I, of negative I. So wherever I see an x, I'm going to plug in negative I. So it's negative I cubed minus negative I squared minus 8 times negative I. All right, so negative I cubed is negative I cubed minus negative I squared is I squared, and negative 8 times negative I is positive 8I. Now remember, you have to know this here. I cubed is negative I, so that's negative times negative I, so that's going to be positive I squared is negative 1, so it's minus negative 1, which is going to be plus 1, and then I have plus 8I. So when I combine like terms, I plus 8I, that's 1 plus 9I. All right, so let's take a look at D. D says, let me just move some of this stuff. Okay, so D says, using the information from part A and B, is f of x odd, even, odd, or neither, and why? So remember, when we want to know even or odd, we plug in opposites, right? So I pick a number, I plug it in, I get negative 12. I plug in the opposite, and I get 4. So remember, in order for them to be even, they have to be the same. In order for them to be odd, they have to be opposites. If it's neither of those, it's neither. Okay, so we would write neither because it is not a rotation of 180 degrees, and it is not symmetrical to the y-axis. So also remember that you have to be able to do this algebraically. So remember, algebraically would be no number. So we have f of x is equal to x cubed minus x squared minus 8x, and then you would plug in f of negative x. So that would be negative x cubed minus negative x squared minus 8 times negative x. So this here would be negative x cubed minus x squared plus 8x, and then you would compare. All right, so these here are opposite. These are the same. You can't have opposite and same in the same thing, so this is neither. All right, let's take a look at E. It says, what are the extremas? So those are your maxes and mins, so graph it on your calculator. All right, so when we graph this on the calculator, it looks something like this. All right, so I'm going to find this point. So you can use your calculator. So you do second calc, you do max, you do left bound. So bring the cursor to the left. Right bound, and you want it to guess. And I'm going to just round this. So I might have a max at negative 1.33, comma 6.52. And then you're going to do your min. So do second calc min. Bring it over to left bound, right bound, and you want it to guess. So your min is at 2, comma negative 12. All right, so now you want to know where it's increasing and decreasing. So remember, we drew a number line underneath the graph, and what you plot on your number line are your x values for your max. So my x value here is negative 1.33, and your x value for your min is 2. At the ends, negative infinity and positive infinity. And now you're looking to see what your graph is doing. Remember, you read a graph from left to right. So here your graph is going up. So it's increasing in here. Here your graph is going down, so it's decreasing. And here your graph is going up, so it's increasing. All right, so we were right. It's increasing from negative infinity to negative 1.33. And it's also increasing from 2 to infinity. It is decreasing right in here, so that is negative 1.33 to 2. All right, so let's take a look at 1G. 1G is to determine the end behavior. All right, so 1G here. All right, so my graph here is going down. So as x goes to negative infinity, y is going down. So as x goes to negative infinity, f of x goes to negative infinity. As x goes to the right, so x is going to infinity. So as x goes to infinity, f of x goes to, well, that's going up. So that's going to infinity. Okay, so let's take a look at 2. All right, so 2 is to determine the multiplicity of your function. So I'm just going to rewrite this. All right, so 2a is f of x is equal to x minus 2 cubed times x plus 1. So the first thing is you want to determine your zeros. So it's already in factor form, so I have a 0 at 2 and 0 at negative 1. So these are your zeros. Now, for the multiplicity, you look at the exponent of your factor. So my exponent here is 3, so it's odd. So that means it crosses. And my multiplicity here is 2, so it's even. That means it's tangent. So I have two different multiplicities. So what we would write is at x equals 2, the multiplicity is odd. F of x crosses the x-axis at x equals 2. And now you have to do the even. At x equals negative 1, the multiplicity is even. F of x is tangent to the x-axis at x equals negative 1. All right, so let's take a look at 2b. Okay, so 2b is f of x is equal to negative. Okay, so let me restart that because the volume was turned off for a second here. So let me see here. So 2b was f of x is equal to negative x times x minus 4 cubed, and we want the multiplicity. All right, so we need our zeros. So I have x is equal to 0 and x is equal to 4. So now I need my multiplicity. So look at the exponent. The exponent here is odd. So that means it crosses the x-axis. And my exponent here, where there is none written, is actually a 1. So that's also odd. So it crosses. So they both have 0 and 4 have the same multiplicity, which is odd. So we would write at x equals 0 and x equals 4, the multiplicity is odd. F of x crosses the x-axis at x equals 0 and x equals 4. Okay, so let's take a look at number 3. Okay, so number 3 says to explain how to complete the square to solve for x, then solve algebraically for x by completing the square in simplest a plus bi form. All right, so let me write the equation down first. So that's x squared minus 6x plus 45 is equal to 0. Okay, so what I want to know is how would I complete the square? So the first step in completing the square would be to make sure the leading coefficient is equal to 1. That would be the first thing. Number 2 would be to then move the constant over. Okay, so then in this case, I would get x squared minus 6x equals negative 45. Okay, the next thing, number 3, would be to do half of b and then square it. And then you add to both sides. So I do half of negative 6 is negative 3 squared is 9, and I add that to both sides. So I get x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals negative 45 plus 9. Okay, step 4 is to factor and combine like terms so that I get x times x minus 3 equals negative 36. And then you write, I have to just move everything up. Okay, so now step 5 would be to write your factors as x plus your number squared. So that would be x minus 3 squared equals negative 36. Step 6 would be square root both sides. So I get the square root of x minus 3 squared equals plus minus the square root of negative 36. Don't forget that plus minus. So then we get x minus 3 equals plus minus. Now the square root of negative 36, remember, is 6i. And then step 7 would be to solve. So I would add 3. So they get x is equal to 3 plus minus 6i. Okay, so let's take a look at 4. Okay, 4 says to determine if the following is a function. So you should remember this from Algebra 1. It's a function if the x values don't repeat. Remember the vertical line test? Remember when you have a graph, if you could draw a vertical line anywhere, it's a function if it hits it once. So it's the same thing with points. If the x value doesn't repeat, then it's a function. So I have a 2, 3, negative 2, 0. So all my x values appear one time, so this is a function. And you would put because the x values don't repeat. Okay, so let's look at number 5. It says to find the inverse. All right, so let me write down A. So f of x equals 4x minus 5. And find the inverse, that means inverse there. So remember, inverse means to switch x and y. So I have y equals 4x minus 5. So I switch x and y. X equals 4y minus 5. Add 5 to both sides. X plus 5 equals 4y. Divide both sides by 4. I get x plus 5 over 4 equals y. That's your inverse. So you write as inverse of f of x equals x plus 5 over 4. And just so you know, this can be written in other ways. You could also write as x over 4 plus 5 over 4. And there's really one, so it could be 1/4 x plus 5 over 4. Okay, so those are all the same answer. B is to find the inverse also, but it's given as points. So if I have 2, 4, 3, 4, negative 2, 5, and 0, 6, the inverse is, remember, switch x and y. So it's 4, 2, 4, 3, 5, negative 2, 6, 0. Remember, inverse just means to switch them, so I just switch these two. Switch, switch, and so on. Okay, so let's take a look at 5. All right, so it says to create a word problem using the picture and then set up. I told you guys to set it up, but don't solve it. Okay, so let's put Jill has a garden with dimensions length x squared minus 2x minus 1 and width of 3x minus 5. The perimeter is 72. Find the dimensions. Find the length and width. Okay, so remember, perimeter equal means to add up all the sides. So this would be x squared minus 2x minus 1, and this would be 3x minus 5. So I would have 72 equals x squared minus 2x minus 1 plus 3x minus 5 plus x squared minus 2x minus 1 and 3x minus 5. So then when I combine like terms, I get 72 equals x squared plus x squared is 2x squared. I have negative 2x, positive 3x is 1x, minus 2x is negative 1x, plus 3x is positive 2x. Negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6, minus 1 is negative 7, minus 5 is negative 12. And then to solve it, we would have to subtract 72. So we would get 0 equals 2x squared plus 2x minus 84. And then you could just stop there because I don't want you to solve this. Okay, so let's flip it over and we'll look at the back. So number 7 is to find the domain and the range of the function. So remember, domain are your x values, how far to the left and how far to the right it goes. So I noticed that this graph just keeps going to the left. That means it's going to negative infinity. And it stops over here at 3. So my domain would be from negative infinity to 3. My range is up and down, how far down and how far up it goes. So it does not go down past this number, which is negative 2, but then your graph keeps going up and up and up, so that's going to infinity. So your range is from negative 2 to positive infinity. Okay, B. Domain is left to right. It does not go past this number here, which is negative 5, and it does not go past the right side at 4. So the domain is from negative 5 to 4. And your range, up and down, it does not go past negative 3 and does not go past positive 3. So that's from negative 3 to 3. Okay, so let's take a look at number 8. All right, so number 8 is to find the focus and the directrix. So I'm just going to rewrite this function over here. So my function is x plus 11 squared equals 4 times y minus 2. So remember, the equation is x minus h squared equals 4p times y minus k. So my vertex then for this function is negative 11, 2. So let's draw a picture. So now I have negative 11, 2. That is my vertex. So now I need my 4p. So 4p is equal to 4. So that means p is equal to 1. That means from vertex to focus, I'm going up 1 unit. So from 2, if I go up 1 unit, that puts me at 3. And that would be my focus. So my focus is negative 11, 3. All right, now I need my directrix. My directrix is now down 1 unit. If I went up 1 unit, then I need to go down 1 unit. That's going to put me at 1. So this would be my directrix. So the directrix is y is equal to 1. Okay, so let's take a look at number 9. Okay, number 9 is writing the equation of the polynomial given these particular roots. So my roots or my zeros are x equals 1, x equals negative 3 plus the square root of 5, and x equals negative 3 minus the square root of 5. All right, so what we're going to do is put these as factors. So I minus 1, and I get x minus 1. That's a factor. For this guy here, I'm going to add 3 minus the square root of 5. So that's x plus 3 minus the square root of 5. And for this one, I'm going to add 3, add the square root of 5. So it's x plus 3 plus the square root of 5. All right, so I'm going to start, but now I have to multiply these. And it should equal 0, remember. So I'm going to start with this. So I'm going to write it up and down like this. And now multiply them. All right, so I'm going to start with the square root of 5 times negative the square root of 5. Remember, square root of 5 times square root of 5 would be 5. And it's going to be negative, so it's negative 5. And then I have the square root of 5. The square root of 5 times 3 would be 3 the square root of 5. And that's positive. And then I have the square root of 5 times x would be x the square root of 5. And then I'm going to multiply 3 times the square root of 5. Negative the square root of 5 would be negative 3 the square root of 5. And then I'm going to multiply 3 times 3, which is 9. Make sure you put that underneath the 5. So that's positive 9. And then I have here 3 times x is going to be 3x. And that I'll put over here. Okay, and then now I'm going to multiply x times negative the square root of 5, which is going to be negative x the square root of 5. And then I'm going to multiply x times 3 is 3x. And then I'm going to multiply x times x, and that's going to give me x squared. Let me squeeze it in over here. Sorry, I have to put it back here because I ran out of room. Okay, so we're just going to make sure we put that down at the other end though. Okay, so now let's add straight down. Alright, so I have positive 4. And then I have these cancel. These here cancel. 3x and 3x is 6x, and then I have the x squared here. All right, now I need to multiply that by this binomial. So now I'm going to multiply by x minus 1. Okay, so I have negative 1 times 4 is negative 4. Negative 1 times 6x is negative 6x. Negative 1 times x squared is negative x squared. X times 4 is 4x. X times 6x is 6x squared. And x times x squared is x cubed. Okay, so now let's add it straight down. And we get x cubed plus 4x squared minus 2x minus 4. And make sure you have equals 0, otherwise it'll be marked wrong. Okay, so let's take a look. Last thing is okay, make sure you do know how to determine all the key features of a polynomial. I'm talking about slope, things that we did in class the other day. You know, the maximum value, the minimum value, all those. Okay, so that's it, and I'll see you guys tomorrow in class. And study, study, study. Have a good night.